What's up guys, SamWickert here, and today I'm going to be showing you how I created the cloth tear effect at the end of Chalk Warfare 3 with the Halo sword stab. Now, it was about the beginning of April when I completed this effect, and I kind of put it off to the end while I was doing the final Iron Man shots as well, and I wasn't too sure how I was going to do it, and it took a lot of figuring out and a lot of experimentation, so I just wanted to share with you how I ended up doing the cloth tear effect in 3ds Max. Now, I had done a lot of cloth simulations before, and I'll just run through one of those to show you how you do that just in case you guys are unaware. Now, I'll just create a sphere, drag it out in the scene, and I'll make sure the radius is about 1 foot. And I want to also see the segmentation. A key component in getting great cloth simulations is segmentation. You want to have high resolution models, so there's a lot of detail in the cloth. And then our cloth is going to be just a plane. We'll drag this out. And again, we'll change the length segments to about 75. And set by 75. We'll raise this up. Now we'll add the cloth modifier to our plane. Select object properties, and we'll add in the sphere. Now the sphere, we want this to be a collision object, and then the plane, we want it to be a cloth. Now there's also presets that you can play around with to get different cloth settings, but we're just gonna leave it on the default. Okay, and now we can press simulate. All right, so the entire simulation just finished, and now we can play it back. And as you can see, we have a very realistic cloth simulation. And we can stop it on one of these frames and do a render. And there we can see a very realistic cloth render. Alright, so I've simply reset the scene, and now I'm going to actually run through the cloth tear tutorial, and I'm going to do it by showing you the exact example from Chalk Warfare 3 with the Halo sword. So I'm first going to make the plane, which will be the jacket that Jamie was wearing. And I'll just drag this out. And again, I'll right-click the perspective and choose edge faces. And before I move on from this, I'm just going to change the dimensions to be about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet. We'll just make it a square. And now I'm going to create what's actually going to tear our cloth, which is just going to be a reference of the Halo sword. So I'm going to create a box. Now I can change the length of it, and also the height, and I'll make it very skinny. Alright, so now just drag this out so it's not intersecting with our cloth. Right click, convert to editable poly. And now I'll just select these two vertices and move them out just to make a sharp edge. This is going to be too detailed because it's not very important to have it detailed. In the end, it's just going to cut the cloth and that's it. So now I'm also going to duplicate this to make the top one as well. Make it an instance. Okay. Now I'll turn on angle snaps and rotate this 180 degrees. Alright, so here we have our Halo sword. We'll also select and link. So this is basically like After Effects parenting. So now when I move this bottom one, the second one moves as well. So I'm just going to roughly line this up with the center. We'll press G to turn off our grid. And now I'm just going to create a rough animation of this Halo sword cutting the cloth. So I'm going to go in our time configuration. I'm going to change the end time to about 35 frames. Okay. Turn on auto key. For the first 4 frames, I'll leave it still. Go to about 10. Have it go through the cloth. Then I'll rotate it just to have a little more variety and make it look a little more realistic, because this is extremely rough, and then I'll pull it back out. And now I'll just rotate it back as if it actually was pulled out. So now we can turn off auto key and we'll watch what we just animated. Awesome. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to play with the segmentation. Before I mentioned that segmentation is very important for creating realistic cloth simulations. Now the problem is that we're working with these square subdivisions, and that's just not going to be very realistic with the cloth tear, because we're going to have to have a very high resolution in order to have a realistic cloth tear with great detail, because if it's not extremely high resolution with the square subdivision, then we'll see the individual blocks that make up our simulation. So to fix this, we're just going to select the length segments, change it to 1. with segments to 1, and we'll change the subdivision type to be triangular instead. So we'll select NURBS. And now what we can do is we can scroll down, well, actually scroll up in my case because I've done this tutorial a couple times. Choose tessellation presets, select high, and then under advanced parameters, we can change it to the last setting, okay? And now, as you can see, we have triangular subdivision, which looks a lot more sporadic and random, which is what we want. So now what we want to do is we also want to subdivide the areas where the halo sword directly impacts the cloth. And this will give us more detail in just those areas and save us from having to add detail to everything. So we're going to add the modifier list, and we'll choose HSDS. And now I'm going to change my view. Now I'll select the circle selection. Change this mode to polygon mode. Press Alt. And then just drag out. Unclick Alt. Press Alt again. And now press Control. And now we selected those two areas. Now I can press Subdivide. And now we have subdivision in the impact areas where the cloth is directly affected by the tear. Now, if you want to get more detailed with this, you can even do another subdivision of a closer area, or even make this a little bigger. But for the purpose of the tutorial, I just wanted to show you this. Now, I'm going to collapse all. Yes. And now we have an editable mesh, which we can use for our cloth now. So I'm going to add the cloth modifier, object properties, and I'll add in the two boxes, change them to collision object, make sure I select cuts cloth, change the plane to cloth, and I'll change it to heavy leather, just like the jacket our actor had. Okay? And now what we can do is expand the cloth properties, select group, and now we want this cloth to stay where it's at, because right now if we do run the simulation, it's just going to fall endlessly in this 3ds Max project. So we're going to go back to our rectangular selection, drag out on all the edges to preserve these edge details so that the cloth will stay in one place. So I'll click Make Group, okay, and then just click Preserve. And now what we also want to do is create a tear. So we're going to change our selection once again to the spray can, which is a very cool selection tool, and I'm just going to roughly draw out where I want these tears to occur. Press Control. Again, you want to be a little more intricate and detailed with this, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to roughly do it. Now, click Make Tear. Okay. All right, so now we also want to scroll down and change the strength to about 5. Now, this is going to be a number you'll want to play with. It's the strength that this cloth has in order to be torn. So now I'll go back into the cloth. And now we're ready to run the simulation. So we'll go back to our perspective view just so we can see everything a little better when it's simulating. And we'll press Simulate. All right, now as you can see, the simulation is complete. We have a torn cloth simulation. Now in my case for Chalk Warfare 3, I added a leather material to this cloth simulation and rendered it out with proper lighting, and then composited it in my scene in After Effects. Now I hope this tutorial helped you guys, and I hope it was beneficial. Hope you learned something. And as always, be sure to subscribe, hit us up on Facebook or Twitter, and if you have any questions or want to contact us, be sure to hit us up on our website. Link will be in the description.